Now, how does an investor really make an EB5 investment? So there's two different options that are available to EB5 applicants. One is called the direct investment. The other is called a regional center investment. So we'll talk about both today. So let's talk about option one, a direct EB5 investment. It's really investment in a new business and creation of 10 full-time jobs. And when I say direct EB5 investment, really pretty much means you're directly investing into an actual real operating business. And remember I talked about this earlier where I said it could either be $1 million or $500,000. The reason the threshold is lowered to $500,000 or $500,000 is because if the business is situated in a targeted employment area, then the investment amount is lowered to $500,000. A targeted employment area is really an area where the unemployment rate is really 150% of the national average rate, or it could also be a rural area. Now, if you look at most EB5 investments, as I said previously, are actually at the $500,000 level, and quite a few areas throughout the U.S. qualify for the $500,000 investment, whether it's a direct EB5 or whether it's a regional center EB5. In terms of the types of direct EB5 investments, generally speaking, most direct EB5 investments are franchises, restaurants, perhaps a small IT company, perhaps a small retail chain of stores, perhaps it's a trucking company or a car wash. But just keep in mind, regardless of the type of direct EB5 investment an investor makes, you have to create those 10 full-time jobs. So as a practical matter, if you say, well, I want to open up a gas station, think about whether you think that gas station or that one gas station can actually create, sustain, and maintain 10 full-time jobs or not. Most gas stations that I've actually personally seen don't tend to create more than maybe 3 to 5 full-time jobs. Now, if you had multiple locations and each of those locations are located in the targeted employment areas where the investment threshold is $500,000, then yes, you can actually accumulate those 10 jobs across multiple locations, and that would qualify for an EB5. Similarly for restaurants, if one restaurant cannot maintain or sustain 10 full-time jobs, then perhaps if you have multiple locations and you get to 10 employees at a minimum, then that would qualify for a direct EB5. I meet a lot of people all over India, and there's quite a few immigrant investors that are interested in the direct EB5 investments. I always sort of tell them that there's some major considerations that you should take into account. It's definitely doable, but it does come with its set of challenges. And I've sort of listed some of the challenges or some of the considerations that one should think about when they're considering a direct EB5. Generally speaking, the successful direct EB5s that I've seen or come across are where there's a good business opportunity and it's a viable business opportunity that has the potential to sustain and thrive, and then also create and maintain 10 full-time jobs over at least 2 to 3 year period. And shortly when we go into the timelines of the EB5 program, we'll talk about why these need to be maintained over at least a 2 to 3 year period. The second consideration is, well, if you do open up a business in the US and say while your petition is pending for an EB5, how do you run that business? Say even if you have a B1, B2 visitors or business visa, you can always come here and visit your business, but you can't work in that business. So there's that limitation or restriction. There are other avenues that might be available to overcome that. So there are other options that you could explore. But again, that is something one should consider, especially if they're fully occupied with their either their current job or their current business, back in the home country. Another consideration that you should think about, or an investor should think about, is getting approval for the I-526 immigration petition for alien entrepreneur. So that is the initial application that an investor files in order to get an EB5. Now, if you just file an EB5 application along with an EB5 compliant business plan, but there are no real operations in place, the business hasn't started, the employees haven't been hired, there are literally no operations whatsoever, would you get approved for that I-526? Or are the visa officers at USCIS, which is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the agency that is in charge of the EB-5 program, that oversees the EB-5 program, will they be satisfied with just a business plan and an investment hasn't been made, employees haven't been hired, business hasn't been started? So that is a major consideration to take into account when one is thinking about a direct EB-5. Now, there are ways around that. Again, perhaps an investor can start that business, on their B1, B2 visitor's visa prior to filing the I-526. But then again, the solution there would be perhaps the investor can find a local partner, perhaps a competent and trustworthy manager or a CEO, since the investor would be waiting for that approval to take place in their home country. So there are these kinds of considerations that one needs to take into account when thinking about a direct EB-5.